There's a lot to talk about with Congressman Adam Schiff this morning. The FBI versus Apple, the president's pick for the Supreme Court. But let's start with this. SeaWorld announcing today they are ending their killer breeding, the Orca breeding program, and making fundamental changes in their Orca experience in general, including the end of the popular Shamu show. SeaWorld even announcing a partnership with Humane Society. The reason we're bringing this up is you have been very active and proactive on this. So what is your reaction to this?
I was delighted. I think it's a great move for these majestic animals. They really ought to be appreciated and studied in the wild, not in a small tank. These are animals that go 100 miles in a day. They may go to depths of 300 feet. And you just can't keep something that large that is used to that kind of space in a small tank swimming in circles. So great for the animals, but also I think great for SeaWorld. People had been voting with their feet. They weren't going to the parks. They really didn't approve of the continued captivity of these creatures. And now moving in a direction of more research, marine biology, animal rescue, I think will be very good for SeaWorld, its image, and its business.
Now, the thing is, killer whales live a very long time, and they still have a good amount of whales on the property.
Still 29,
They're keeping
and there's
them,
and there's a pregnant one as well, so there'll be a next generation.
And I think one is 1 year old, so it's not like we're not going to be seeing these. So is the move more symbolic? Because there's still going to be orcas on their property for a very, very long time.
They're being criticized for not going far enough.
Yeah. I think this is a big move. I think people should applaud what they're doing. It's true that they'll still have the remaining orcas, but they're not going to be breeding any new ones. They're not going to be capturing any from the wild. So this generation will be the last in captivity. There are some serious questions.
What about the people who said they should just be released?
I think there's some serious questions about whether they could survive.
Yeah.
Those that were bred in captivity, raised in captivity, whether they could survive in the wild. It is possible, and I'm not a marine biologist, that you might be able to create an ocean sanctuary near the coast. But those are big questions, and I don't think we should let them distract from the fact this is a sea change for SeaWorld. And
next up,
great move.
Apple, the FBI, America's choosing sides.
Complicated one.
Where are you on this?
Well, I think both parties have taken really the polemic positions. Apple has said we can't possibly accede to any government warrant like this. The FBI saying we want to get into this phone in San Bernardino, but frankly, we want this precedent to be able to use for other phones as well. Neither side seems at the moment willing to compromise in the face of this litigation, but ultimately, we need to see if we can find some compromise here, because people are migrating from their landlines to cell phones. If all cell phone communication is encrypted in the future, what that'll mean is law enforcement will never be able to get a wiretap again, even when they can make the requisite showing in court. That's a huge impact on law enforcement, as well as not being able to access these devices.
But those who say once you cross that line, it's crossed forever. Once you make it possible to get in.
It's not just a one-time exception. It opens the door to so much more.
No, it's very true. This is a difficult balance in terms of privacy and security. The question is, can the risks by allowing law enforcement with a warrant to get into these devices, are the risks able to be managed? Can you mitigate them? Now, Apple says no. If you have any door, all bad actors can go through it. The government's position is, no, you can manage the risks. There are risks already. Apple has to upgrade your phone.
Smart and savvy.
They have to be able to get in your phone to upgrade it, so there's already a door there. I've asked the National Academy of Sciences to give an objective science and technology-based assessment of what are the risks, what can we do technologically, so that we can inform policymakers on this.
On to another subject. You're just a bystander. The Supreme Court story going on. You have to understand the Constitution, Article 2 leaves you out. That basically gets to confirm, to advise and confirm on this thing. The House does what? You sit on your hands, you yell, what do you do?
Well, what I've done in the past, and without success, is I organized a bipartisan group in the House to write to the Senate leadership to say essentially that when judges are nominated, you should give a certain period of time to vet them, and then you should have an up or down vote. No matter who the president is, no matter who's in the majority, you ought to do this. This is a co-equal branch of government.
Congressman, with respect. Now, what do you really think?
Well,
that's not going to happen.
What I really think is that this is an appalling abuse, just absolutely appalling We have a co-equal branch of government. We're going to have a vacancy in a 4-4 Supreme Court for a year, and only for the most naked of political reasons. And I think that's awful. I think the GOP, frankly, wants to motivate their base to turn out at the elections and keep this vacant, and that, I think, is a terrible development. We have to find a way to get both parties, frankly, to agree on some rules that will apply no matter who's in the Oval Office, and to stick by it.
You have those rules. It's called the Constitution. It's just sometimes people interpret it the way they want.
For their own needs.
Yes. I mean, for me, the Constitution is quite clear in terms of what the obligations are of the co-equal branches, and we are failing. It's why people hate the Congress.
Do you get a kick out of this? Some Republicans, the more so-called reasonable ones, have said, you know, this is what we'll do. We like this guy, Marrick Garland. We're not going to confirm him. But if a Democrat is elected instead of a Republican, in that session, that lame duck session, we'll approve of Marrick Garland, because if they approve of Marrick Garland, then they won't get the more liberal judge that Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders would name. What do you think of that?
I think that it shows exactly just how this is about the politics. This is not, Mitch McConnell claims, a policy decision that really ought to be the next president who decides. No, this is about motivating people for the election. It's about sort of getting the best deal on a justice they can, depending on who the next president is going to be. All those considerations, to me, seem wholly inappropriate.
There is principle where people say, we don't want a liberal judge. It'll make it 5-4, and it'll change a lot of things.
Well, in this case, they have a centrist, moderate judge, so I'm assuming the president was hoping that would entice some of the GOP base to come forward, but most likely not.
Well, you're absolutely right. This is a very well-respected centrist judge that no one has questioned the qualifications for. I mean,
except on Second Amendment issues, on gun issues. That has come up.
Stark contrast with Justice Antonin and Scalia.
Anyone who's nominated, you're going to have people on one side or the other of the abortion issue, the gun issue, you name it, who don't like the nominee. But that's no reason not to have a vote on the nomination.
I'm sorry, we have to go. I want to ask you a big question while we have you here. It seems to me the dysfunction is as great as I've ever seen in my life. You're right in the middle of the dysfunction. Are we overreacting to what we're seeing, or is it that bad?
It's that bad. It's that bad. And when the government can't do its most basic responsibility, the Congress can't pass a budget, the Senate won't confirm a nominee, you know, a year in advance of the election or a year in advance of when they would take a position on the court. Those are basic levels of dysfunction. I'm a big believer in something Bill Clinton once said, which is there's nothing wrong in America that can't be fixed by what's right in America. But right now, our broken governance prevents us from fixing what's broken.
Congressman Schiff, thank you very much. Adam Schiff.
Thank you. Good to see you.